After a summer of drought in southern Ontario, the question of who can draw water and for what purpose became a topic of growing debate in the province. For many in the Guelph area, the prime concern revolved around water permits issued to the food and beverage giant Nestlé. Joining us now for more on what's been stirred up in the nation's capital, Barry McKenna. He's a national business correspondent for the Globe and Mail. And here in our studio, James Gordon, Guelph City Councillor and co-founder of Wellington Water Watchers. Thanks to both of you for coming in. Barry, I'd like to start with you because you wrote a column that really stirred up a lot of the debate that has continued to swell as a result of what Nestlé is trying to do. Why don't you just, for those who don't know, set the scene? Why have they been such a focal point for this debate?
Well, they acquired a well. They outmaneuvered the local township of West Wellington, just out that surrounds Elora, Ontario, to buy a commercial well, and they intend to use the well to supply a nearby water bottling operation that they have. So it's But on a larger scale, it's really because Nestlé is an identifiable name, a multinational that's associated with consumer products around the world, and they're associated with water. They're one of the biggest water bottling companies, if not the biggest water bottling company in the world, and their name is all over the grocery store shelf every time you go there. At
the risk of what will be numerous bad puns that will maybe emerge from this discussion, the chairman of Nestlé got himself into a bit of hot water over this issue when he went on to say that water isn't a fundamental human right, but we do want to hear from him because he embellished on those comments somewhat. So Sheldon, let's roll that clip.
Water is a human right. The 25 liters of water that we need as a minimum as a person in order to live decently. But I don't think it's a human right to fill up my swimming pool, to wash my cars, to water the golf course, or even to water the garden. I don't think this is a human right. And if we do not understand that the water, which is a human right, is the smallest part of the water that we are using, and that the big parts, which can be, just to give you a figure, I mentioned we need about 25 liters per day per capita. Well, we are using in the United States about 400 liters per day. So this 380 liters of water, I don't think this is a human right, and this should have a price.
James, do you take issue with any of what he had to say?
I think the curious thing about what he said, first of all, is that he is retracting his own original statement where he at one time claimed it wasn't a human right, probably took a lot of heat for it, so he's come up with this. What bothers me about it is that 25 liters, he says, per day, it sounds like he's deciding for us how much we need, and the rest is fair game.
Well, take the numbers out of it and just take the general theme. He says, water to fill your pool is not a human right. You're not going to argue with that, are you?
No.
Okay. And washing the car and gardening and all that business.
Yeah, but it's, I think the debate is water a public trust, or is it available for consumption by corporations like Nestlé?
And how do you answer the question?
I think that in these times of drought and in our area growth, we have to make sure it's a public trust, and we have to look very seriously at whether using our public trust water for corporate use, whether that is of benefit to our community and whether it is of risk to our future sustainability.
Barry, any issue with that?
I think the issue here is rational use of water and sensible use of water and bringing discipline to the system. And you can have undisciplined corporate users of water. You can just as easily have undisciplined consumers of water on the residential side, which is the sensible comments about pools. When California was experiencing its severe droughts, one of the first things they did was they imposed bans on refilling your pool. What price of water brings discipline and brings good behavior in terms of use. And I don't think you can just say it's black and white between the corporate sector and the rest of society.
Okay, let's follow up on that.
Rational use across.
Let's follow up on that. When you mention price, how much does Nestlé intend to pay per liter for the water they would like to take?
The simple answer is not enough. In Ontario, users like Nestlé pay $3.71 per million liters. When you consider that 600 milliliter bottle of water costs what, $1.75 or $2 in a vending machine. That seems like a ridiculous gap. But it's not Nestlé that sets the price, it's the province of Ontario. And there are a lot of other users that are paying that amount, and there are many that are not paying at all for the water they use, and they are not fully paying the price of what it costs to manage the resource and to control the resource and to renew the resource.
Well,
let's
do some comparing here, because you've said Nestle does $3.71 per million liters. Quebec does $70, not $3.71, but $70 per million liters. How about, Barry, what farmers or other industries pay for water? Any comparison there?
Most farmers don't pay anything at all, and they are businesses as well, and that water winds up being fully consumed largely in the product, so it doesn't go back into the system. It's being removed from the system. So you know, there has to be discipline and sensible use of water, and one way to do that is through price.
James, once again, let's do the comparison here. Yeah. $3.71 for Nestle, $70 for Quebec.
Right.
Nothing in many cases for farmers. How about your residents? How much do they pay?
I think we pay between $1 and $2 for 1,000 liters.
For 1,000, not for 1,000,000.
That's right.
So, I mean, the number I have here is they pay 576 times more.
That's right.
What do you think of that?
Well, I think these are, we're going to get into too many water puns, but these are dangerous waters to talk to this line of thinking. I worry that if we commodified water by adding that cost per unit to it, we are in all sorts of dangers through NAFTA agreements, free trade agreements, so that we could be liable, as we see the thirsty Midwest, for instance. They're going to want our water eventually. Adding the cost is good because we can contribute that money towards conservation technology. But once it's there, if you were a water bottle taker, Takens or whatever.
Takens takers?
That's it.
There you go.
And I said, I'm not sure you should be taking that much water, but we'll charge you a lot for it, and then it's okay. Does that make it okay? And that's a very big question right now.
All right. Well, Barry, let me put, I mean, you having studied this, let's put the question to you. Whether you're a farmer, whether you're an industry, whether you are a bottler, whether you are a resident, is it your view that everybody should be paying the same amount?
I don't think the amount is what's right. You know, you're not going to make everybody pay exactly the same amount. What you really want to do is encourage sensible use, and not encourage overuse, and also cover the cost of keeping the resource, to monitor the resource, and to control the resource, and to make sure it's there for tomorrow. And you can't do that without charging for it. Charging for it creates discipline, and that's a good thing. And I just add that trade agreements, such as the ones we have, do protect Canadians, and Canadians can do what they decide what they want to do with their water. But there are times when there's a lot of water that is just running out to the sea unused. If our neighbors to the south were willing to pay enormous sums of money for some of our water in a controlled way, I don't see any reason why we couldn't do it on our own terms, set our own price, and not damage anyone in Canada, not affect anybody in Canada if we control the process. I think it's a red herring to suggest that exports are a bad thing to start with. If there's a resource that's running out to sea, why not share it and make them pay the price?
James, your reply?
I think that what Barry is suggesting now, that why not sell it if we've got it, that's presuming that there is not a scarcity now. In fact, your channel this week has been live streaming the Great Lakes Forum.
We're all about the Great Lakes this week.
Yep. So we, as Canadians, get complacent when we see, look, we've got more water than anywhere in the world. How much of it is drinkable, and how much do we need to anticipate its use for future uses?
Do you think there's a scarcity of water in our province right now?
Yes, I do.
You think there is a scarcity?
Well, if we have been having the kind of restrictions on water that my municipality and many others have had over the last 2 summers due to drought, that isn't just poor management of water. We are the largest city in Canada, in Guelph, that relies solely on groundwater for its water supply.
Does that look familiar, what we put up on the screen?
Yes,
there?
indeed.
Tell the people what that is.
So all of us Guelphites have been subject at least to this level 2. We're still under it. Reduce and stop non-essential use. And why it's become such an issue is that the Nestlé permit, they voluntarily restricted, I think more as a publicity move than anything else. No one legislated them. We don't have the water policies that will do that. So until we have a comprehensive water policy in the province that legislates that kind of taking the same way that we, as you just saw from that slide, that we are required to do it, then it's not a level playing field.
Well, let me put this piece of information up here. Sheldon, if you would, this is board number 1, middle of page 3. This is also from the Globe and Mail, which says Nestlé and its defenders frequently point out that the entire bottling industry's water consumption is small in relation to other industries. Nestlé's John Challoner, for instance, cites data showing Nestlé and other bottlers extract just 0.6% of permitted water from the Grand River watershed in which Elora is situated. Agricultural irrigation accounts for more than 6%, while aggregate washing and livestock both account for 4% each. We haven't even mentioned beer, which I suspect, given your neck of the woods in the province, beer probably takes a lot of water out of those rivers as well. Barry, given those statistics, is Nestlé the right target for people who are concerned about this to go after?
I think they're completely the wrong target because you're going to wind up with policies that aren't appropriate because you're targeting what is not really the major source of the problem. And the major source of the problem are climate change, perhaps. They are urban sprawl. They're growth out of Toronto. Guelph has experienced a tremendous spillover from what's happening in the Toronto real estate market. I mean, those are the real issues. And you have to sort of separate annual problems, seasonal problems like droughts, which may be may become chronic because of climate change. They can also become much more erratic. I spent a good part of my summer on Georgian Bay, where in 2013 we were worried about the water going down and disappearing forever. It's up almost a foot since then, and our dock has been floating away. So there's a lot about water levels that we don't know, it's something that you have to be careful about making the wrong policies or attacking the wrong problem, really.
James, I appreciate your concern about water and its scarce and what you believe to be a scarce situation, but given that Nestlé is taking not even 1%, and these other industries are taking so much more, have you got the wrong target?
I don't think Nestlé as a corporation needs to be the target. The target right now, and this is what we're trying to reflect community will about, is actually our own government policies towards water takers like Nestlé.
Our own government policies, meaning provincial policy.
That's correct. So some people say to me, well, James, Nestlé is not breaking any laws, so why are we messing with them? What I would say in retort to that is that maybe we need to change the laws because those water taking permits are 100 years old now in the way they were given. We never predicted that they would be offered for the kind of massive water taking that we are doing now. And that 0.6% is a bit of a red herring too, because as Barry correctly pointed out, with our growth and our drought, we are projected to grow 46% by 2041, which is a mandate from the province with their Places to Grow Act. So that drop in the bucket that is that 0.6, that is a shrinking bucket, as far as we know, and Barry also put his finger on it. We don't actually know how much of our groundwater is down there. We know how much we're mandated for, so it's a shrinking bucket, and more people are going to be thirsty for a piece of that bucket. So why should we offer any water for a non-essential use, and in fact, what some would say would be a frivolous, unnecessary use, which is water bottling?
Let me put this other angle on the table here. This courtesy of my pal Keith Leslie, who's a reporter, darn good one, with the Canadian Press, who last month had the following to report. There has been vocal opposition and protests against renewing Nestlé's permit in Aberfoyle, Ontario, after the area suffered a drought this summer that forced residents to restrict water use for watering lawns and washing cars. Treasury Board President Liz Sandals who represents Guelph, Ontario in the legislature, where residents have been criticizing Nestlé, says she finds it frustrating that many opponents don't realize the company agreed to reduce its water takings from the Aberfoyle, well, because of the drought. Okay, where do we want to go here? You've got a...
Well, they said that's voluntarily.
I hear you, but your problem is with the province and provincial policy.
Yep.
And ironically, you got one of the senior-most cabinet ministers in the government of Ontario in whose riding this is happening.
Yeah.
So, have you got to her yet?
Well, I think politician to politician, I would say to Ms. Sandals that you don't start a conversation that we're trying to have by insulting the intelligence of your own constituents. So she's said that we are uninformed about it. As the co-founder of the Wellington Water Watchers, we've been working for 10 years to raise awareness about our own sustainability, our own groundwater issues. And I think to say that what they're doing is fine is actually a correct statement for right now. So where I would take issue and where I'd love to go with her and collaborating with the government is so where do we need to be in 25 years, and can we get there without running a pipeline from Lake Erie, which would cost us $1 billion, without drilling another well, which would cost $10 million per well. We've got an aquifer there that is being used for what many consider to be a non-essential purpose. So should we allow any of that before we have a comprehensive policy which allows us to know, A, what is down there, and what do we need to conserve so that we can be sustainable for our future generations?
Okay, let me get Barry back in here. Barry, again, we're into the realm of politics now, and one of the things that's transpired is that the Council of Canadians has advocated a boycott of Nestlé because they're not happy with Nestlé's behavior in this situation. What's your view about the advisability of that?
It's just hitting the wrong target, and it takes the focus off of what the real problem is. And you know, we've just been talking about it. The real problem is future growth. It's urban sprawl. If there isn't water available, ready water available, and the city of Guelph and the neighbouring townships aren't willing to invest the money to produce the water to allow the growth, then there shouldn't be growth in those areas. The growth should be in somewhere else where there is water. You know, you have to provide the necessary resources to allow that growth. Don't let the growth come and then claim you don't have the water. I mean, you have to be sensible about it and prepare for what's coming. And if it requires piping water in from Lake Erie or somewhere else, if you want the growth, that may be what you have to do, and then you charge people for it.
Do you think this whole controversy about Nestlé, which admittedly is a small player in this larger drama, do you think it served, though, as a useful springboard to a larger policy discussion about what we ought to be doing with our water, Barry?
I mean, if it's a recognizable name and if it attracts attention, but if you think about it from the corporate view, you know, they're looking at it. We haven't done anything illegal. We've applied for the permits. We've not taken water when we've realized that there are drought situations. We're being a good corporate citizen here, and our name's being dragged through the mud and you know, encouraged Canadians to start boycotting products from chocolate to cookies to whatever else Nestlé makes across the country. I mean, that doesn't seem like it's going to lead to the right place.
James, your view on whether this can kickstart a broader discussion about water use?
I think it already has, and it's very exciting to see that just raising a motion in a little small town council meeting has enabled a national discussion about it. I think I have a hard time separating out water taking in general. The public falls victim to that too, and I agree with Barry here that it doesn't need to be about Nestlé per se, but because it happens to be their particular permit, they've become the focal point. And the boycott, I think, is responding to something else, in that if water is indeed a public trust, as their chair says, I believe that their abysmal environmental record worldwide has lost that trust with people, so they are reticent about granting the stewardship of our most precious resource to a company that has that kind of a record.
I haven't got you on the record yet as to the advisability of a boycott against Nestlé. What's your view on that?
I actually would support the boycott for human rights and environmental reasons, but I don't think it's directly related to the issue at hand.
Barry, let's just finish up here on this. Where do you think this story can go in terms of getting the government of Ontario's attention and them making the policy changes that so many people seem to think are necessary right now?
Yeah, I think it's probably there's one figure that's attracted a lot of attention, and that's exactly how much Nestlé is paying for drawing the water it does now. Mind you, it's a private well and it owns it, but I think focusing people's attention on what we're charging people for water is extremely important. There are lots of places in Canada where water is not metered in homes, and that just encourages wasteful water use, and no one wants that. And it's not just an Ontario issue, it's a Canada-wide issue, and there is plenty of water to go around if we're sensible about it, and I think there's even water to sell if we want to.
Would you agree, though, that for a provincial government that's already pretty gun-shy about the level of taxation it has imposed on people in the province, the notion of charging people more for water, which they see as plentiful, is a tough sell politically?
I'm sure it's a tough sell politically, but if you relate it to climate change, I mean, putting a price on carbon is a sensible way to reduce fossil fuel consumption. It's the same way with water.
Gotcha. Thanks to the two of you for joining us tonight here on TVO. Barry McKenna for the Globe and Mail in our nation's capital, and James Gordon, who's, I like your Twitter handle. He's that James Gordon.
Yeah.
Not the other James Gordon. He's that James Gordon. From Guelph City Council and a co-founder of the Wellington Water Watchers. Thanks, you two.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.